Hi there, all you magnificent creators of habit. Welcome to Table to Stage. I'm Jordan Worma. So here are a few interesting questions. At what point does performance become theater? At what point does theater become spectacle? And who decides where that line is? So that's really all I had to read from the Desultory Theater Club website before I knew it would really be fun to chat and find out the answers to those questions and what drives Keith Paul, who is the force behind Desultory, toward his creative goals. Desultory isn't limited by the walls of a performance space or even by the size of its stage. Instead, really what they do is kind of seek out new and interesting spaces where they create new theater experiences. You're not likely to find a traditional performance among Desultory's offerings, and even when they do use a more traditional space, including the Warner Theater in Torrington, which is where Keith and I sat down to record our conversation. What you will almost certainly find is an experience that not only challenges you, but also entertains you. And I get the feeling that they really hit that mark with pretty good accuracy. So once you've heard from Keith about Desultory, I hope that you'll feel inspired to create a 5-star review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast service. And if you're a regular listener and you want to show your support beyond a rating or review, you can become a patron supporter at patreon.com/tabletostage, or you can pick up some wicked awesome swag at spreadshirt.com/tabletostage. T-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and a few other things with 2 different designs. So whether you consider yourself a creator of habit or you just want to keep creating, there are some great items available at decent prices. If you'd rather just have a sticker, drop an email to tabletostage@gmail.com and I'll send one out directly, no charge, just as a thank you for being a listener. All right, so for now, let's get Desultory with Keith Paul. Where are you? You're from Connecticut initially, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Torrington?
Born, bred, and raised in Torrington, Connecticut.
Yeah. And what about this area has kind of made it special for you as far as like getting involved in the community now that you're a grown human? You're still here.
I did a lot of traveling, just coming and going and adventuring, as we've called it to this point. And about 10 years ago, it just felt right to come back here.
Okay.
I do have some family in the area.
Well, that's always a big draw for people. Yeah.
And, it's weird. Over the years, I've spent so many hours meeting people and developing these relationships.
Yeah.
It always makes sense. As weird as Connecticut is, as much as I dislike Connecticut at times, for various reasons, it's mostly political.
Yeah.
I just love the people I've met. My life, I look at it and I just think, man, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah. I've lived in a lot of different places, and coming back to Connecticut was always something I had intended to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but just growing up here, it's just, I'm not sure where I would survive anywhere else.
Well, it seems nice for families
too. Yeah.
I always said that if but I just never did.
Yeah.
So it happens.
Well, no, not for everybody.
Yeah.
So how did you initially get into creative arts? Was this something that you did while you were younger, like as a kid?
I remember little things. I remember my dad used to have those Zippy the Pinhead comic books.
Oh, I don't know that one.
It's these weird little, and it wasn't really for kids, and was there was this weird sort of pinheaded guy that would go around, and it led into a lot of these other comics. There were these drug comics and stuff that were big, and I don't know if it was the late 70s, early 80s. So I remember at one point, I made a Zippy the Pinhead little puppet doll. And I remember these weird little things as I was growing up, but nothing that was I'm an artist. I want to create. I want to but there's moments.
Yeah.
It really wasn't until after high school.
So you just sort of like just was sort of a permeating piece of your childhood just to have this stuff around.
Yeah, like I remember loving music.
Yeah.
I remember getting marionettes. I remember doing a lot of traveling with my mom and like going places and just really falling in love with seeing things visually.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So it wasn't until after high school that you really figured out theater was a thing you wanted to do, right?
Yeah, literally one Friday night,
Yeah.
a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was just I was at this incredible crossroads, but that's a whole
At
nother-
18 years old?
It just was. It was weird for me, just leaving high school and thinking about what was that and what am I supposed to do next, and
Yeah.
is it the same thing as everyone else is doing? I never felt the same.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, someone's like, "Hey, do you want to come and help us out down at the, this theater that's been in the center of my hometown my whole life?" And I've only stepped in there a few times.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it was just like, whoa.
Was this like on stage?
This
first
was
time?
backstage.
Okay, backstage.
I was hanging out backstage. The show was MAME, and it was like early 1991
Okay.
at the Warner Theater. And hearing an audience of, almost 1,700 people clap and
Yeah.
watching just everything going on, set pieces coming on and off, and pretty girls all over the place, and you just, I mean, there was more than that.
Yeah.
But it was just trying to process it. It just never.
So your first time working in theater was on the Warner stage.
Yeah, backstage.
So today, this is my first time in this building.
Yeah.
And when we went through the auditorium, I was looking around thinking, this is a beautiful theater.
It's gorgeous.
And I can't imagine what it must have been like for your first experience working in theater to be in a place like this, because I've worked on stages that have been,
Yeah.
well, not like this.
Yeah.
It must have been a pretty incredible experience to be able to become a part of that community so quickly and in such a beautiful room.
Yeah, what an amazing group of people. Not a lot of questions about me as a personality. I just kind of threw myself into it, and,
Yeah.
and that was great. And this was even before we remodeled. We
Okay.
remodeled at the Warner.
Okay.
So now when you see it, it looks even better. They gave it like a nice scrub, and
Yeah.
we painted a bunch of stuff. And
Yeah, it's a very nice room.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I get up here.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
That's all I can say, to have something like that in town. I sometimes wish I had found it sooner.
Yeah.
But it happens.
So what was step 2 for you? I mean, you went from backstage. What was next?
I went from backstage, and the person in charge at the time was this guy named Jim Fritsch, and Jim said, "Oh, I'm doing this show next. Are you interested in auditioning?" And I said, "Sure." And it was Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, okay.
I'm not particularly a religious person.
Right.
That's the nicest way of putting it. And I had never heard it before, and it was weird. And I went and I listened to it, and I was like, wow, here it is, this rock opera with no like actual theatrical like words, but it's like there's vocalization. And I was like, okay, so I auditioned, and then that was my first time on stage. And
In what
after
role?
that, I was just in the chorus.
Oh, okay.
But what an amazing cast, and it solidified so many early friendships that I rely on even now.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just took me from there. And what's great is this being a community theater, I mean, that's what I'm looking for, a community.
Yeah.
I would come back and help paint. I would come back and help with lights or
Sure.
sound. So all of a sudden, I'm not just meeting the actors, I'm running with other things. And then all of a sudden, just being who I am, I started going, well, what else is there?
Yeah, yeah.
So then at the time, we had a college age and high school age theater group out of Copark called Rainbow Summer Theater.
All right.
We also had Torrington Civic Theater. 15 minutes that way, the way I'm pointing, is Goshen, and they have Goshen players.
Okay.
Then you down Route 8, you have Thomaston Opera House.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you had all of these options, and people just kind of came and went, and
Yeah.
you just started going, man, what else can I...
Are all of those places still around now?
Everything with the exception of Torrington Civic Theater and Rainbow Summer Theater,
Okay.
the two groups out of Copark here in
Yeah.
Torrington.
I know Goshen and Thomaston
Yep.
are still going. Yeah.
Yeah, they're still growing strong.
Yeah. Wow. So you just immersed yourself in the theater community.
Yeah. I did everything for a few years until I got out to Hartford. I was working with a group called the Mark Twain Maskers.
Okay.
Who was at Columbo used to work with them.
Oh, really? Peter Falk?
Peter Falk had done community theater with them. And it was after a production with them that I ran into a friend who was like, you should call these people. Introduced me to a group in Philadelphia who I auditioned for. They signed me, and I traveled for a few years doing children's theater tours. And it all just kind of compounded. Children's theater tours led to other acting opportunities, other technical opportunities.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, here I am, 30. Oh, geez, I don't even know. So many years later.
Yeah.
How do I reapply that?
Yeah.
How do I keep myself out of trouble? How do I stay away from stagnation? What do I do to make things interesting, not only for audiences, but also for myself?
Right.
And it's not just theater, which is the thing, which really, it's hard for me to manipulate time. People are always like, you're working on so many different projects.
Yeah. I remember when I first reached out to you, you immediately mentioned that you had hands in a bunch of different ovens there.
I used to be real good, and lately it's just, it's hard. So much of this is me, and I just don't have time always to get on places cyber-wise and answer these dozen emails and update the few websites. And
well, that seems to be a theme, I think, with a lot of creatively minded people is they're always looking for what's the next project, what's the next outlet, what can I get my hands dirty with this time, you know what I mean?
Right.
So what was the answer to that question for you as far as what was going to be the thing that you focused on?
That was a long answer, wasn't that? Jeez Louise. So I just said watch. I said watch. One night I was hanging out with some friends and we got into that Torrington is New York conversation, and I was just like, I'm like, well, watch. You just do something. How do you affect your community? Let's create something. Let's draw an eye to, like, what's great. We've got the Warner. We've got Nutmeg Ballet. We've got all these larger theaters.
Yeah.
What about the weird stuff? What about the odd stuff that I liked as I traveled? So we created over a weekend this group called the Desultory Theater Club.
Over a weekend?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I wanted to. The hardest thing was just coming up with the name.
Yeah. All right. So explain the name, because that's not a word I think most people have probably heard.
It's an homage to a friend of mine that passed away. We used to do music, and it was called Desultory Productions.
Okay.
And it's a take. Desultory means haphazard or random. It's actually pronounced Desultory.
Okay.
So we flip it on purpose.
Yeah.
Plus, Desultory, and I think Desultory. It's just got that.
Oh yeah, you do late night shows with that one.
Good evening and welcome to the Desultory Theater Club.
Exactly.
And then we just took off. I found an art gallery
Yeah.
that was willing to let me come in, and an original play that a friend of mine had written, and a friend of mine that was a singer-songwriter.
Uh-huh.
And instead of just creating just somebody doing something, it was an event, it was a destination, it was something interesting happening.
Sure.
And then here it is, it'd be 9 years this February, and I've done 103 shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Just finding random places, random things. Sometimes I'm approached.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I approach people. Sometimes it's a venue. I mean, it's never the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Not only am I trying to create to challenge myself, but I'm also trying to keep in mind that people need to come to these things.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I like to push the envelope if I can. Is it like, will people come and see this? Like when I booked Circus Delecti, the Connecticut has this freak show. And they used to be a lot larger. And they came into Torrington to the art gallery that first year, and they did like just crazy. My favorite shots, I love the shots of them, but there's photos of the audience too, and the audience reactions have this like, what? And that's kind of what I
just
want.
Walk into kind of thing?
And it doesn't always have to be for shock.
Yeah.
There's one of my good friends, Eric and Elizabeth, they have a band called Pocket Vinyl out of New London, and they're amazing, and I've booked them so many times, and they come in and they have this great vibe, and the audience is always like, man, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah. So how much of it for you now, I mean, you've been doing this almost a decade.
Yeah.
How much of it now is just the audience trusts you when they see that name, that they know whatever it is that they're coming to see? They don't even care what the act is so much as they see Desultory.
Yeah.
And they go, I'm going to go check out what they're doing because I know it's going to be good.
Yeah, I pull a lot of people from like New Haven and Hartford out here to like Torrington, and people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I don't sleep, and I really try to focus on what will excite people to get people to, is it P.T. Barnum? You have to have a gimmick.
Sure, yeah.
Got it.
This way to the great egress.
Right.
So explain Desultory a little bit, because I mean, it's not you call it a theater group, right?
Yeah, it's not really a
but
theater.
It's not really theater.
Yeah, it's not really a club. Music. It's not really a business. It's just sort of this. I call it like a nomadic, free form. There just isn't. It just sort of goes from like somebody's like, hey, I need somebody to come in, and be like, yeah, let's team up, and I'll help promote or just.
Because your website's really interesting, and you've got a link on there to your YouTube page, which I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not one to normally do that. I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube, but I got caught.
Yeah. Oh,
so you've got music, just straight ahead rock and roll music or different styles. You've got some burlesque performers that are on there. I mean, it's a very eclectic group that come and perform under the Desultory production, right? Yeah. So when people reach out to you, have you found that there's one thing that they have in common, is that as far as like the reason for why they decided to bring whatever their performance or their art is to you? Do they tell you what it is about you that draws them?
I think it's just as a melting pot or word of mouth at this point.
Yeah.
People understand that it's not really so much about everyone else. It's about me trying to create stuff too. So it's like in my mood.
Okay.
Like currently I'm tired of a few certain kinds of shows. So I'm trying to refocus and look at other things. But I find that sometimes it's like, oh man, I can't find a venue. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Let me pair you with... I'll be at the theater and I'll meet a mother who's like, oh, my daughter plays ukulele and she's really good. And then you happen to catch a clip and then you're like, oh, man, would you come in and just play 5 songs before? And these are people that I feel like I'm not trying to make money.
Yeah.
We've taken care of venues. We've taken care of the artists. This isn't about me at all, other than like me trying to create.
Right.
I want credit for that.
Sure.
But I think that's an honest thing to want credit for.
Of course.
And I also want people to see these people. I want to discover something, a piece of art, a singer, a songwriter, or whatever it is, and just constantly trying to mix it up. But it's also a disservice to myself. Going into my 9th year, 103 shows, is how do I top? And that's one of the reasons, I took a half a year off last year to kind of do some self-exploration, and going into this winter, it's really starting to make sense about letting go and moving on to other things as an artist. And it's just weird. And it's weird to call myself an artist, but enough people have said it now where I don't mind. I'm trying to create art.
Yeah.
But like I said, I also want to keep it interesting for me. And that's why I'm glad I always have the Warner as a good backup.
Yeah,
because I can always come and do shows and direct.
Well, I mean, having the Warner locally is a great asset for the community. But I mean, for you as somebody who's trying to organize all these very, very different acts, you're not always bringing them to the Warner for performance, right? So, I mean, how much of it is you see a venue and you think, I could use this place for something, and how much of it is you hear or you see something and you think, I got to find a place to feature this? Like, how do you make those connections between the performer and the venue?
I want to say it's like 50-50. Sometimes I'll ask a performer, especially if I'm closer to them, they'll be like, hey, we've got a date and we're coming through. And I'll think, well, okay, we've done 6 or 7 shows together.
Yeah.
What's something interesting I can do? What's something different I can do?
Okay.
And then other times a venue will be like, hey, we want to do a burlesque and comedy show.
Yeah.
What do you need to do that? And I've got all the makings. I just need to find whatever their space is, plan it out, and bang it out. I'm pretty open.
Yeah. Do you have sort of a list of places that you use more frequently than others?
On and off. Yeah. I tend, I don't want to say like a snake, but you shed your skin after a bit.
Okay.
You go somewhere and you do some stuff, and then you're like, all right, cool, that was fun.
Yeah. I've used up this room. I got to find something else.
And then sometimes they want to move on to something else too. Sometimes they're like, oh, okay, we've seen how he's done it. We're just going to do our own thing. There's a couple of venues that went on to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And at the time, you're like, oh man, how come I'm not involved? And then you're like, you know what? I'm like, that's actually pretty cool, because all of a sudden other opportunities arise. And then, as me, I'm always seeking out new things. That makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So it's that duality between, oh man, this nice comfy blanket, and then, there's life outside your apartment, kind of like a thing.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned the website, and you have some information about the theater club there.
Yes.
And you've got this one part where you sort of ask these questions, and I want to ask you about where these questions came from, how you go about answering them, and just sort of the whole philosophy behind this. So you ask on the site, at what point does performance become theater? At what point does theater become spectacle? And who decides where the line is? Can you talk about that for a little bit? Because I find those very interesting and contemplative kind of questions.
So I have this lovely friend, Matt Doyle, who wrote our first play that we performed when I created Desultory. I am not necessarily a wordsmith all the time.
Okay.
So I sent him and talked to him a bunch over that first weekend when I came up with the name. And I'm like, we need a mission statement. We need it. And he sent this to me, and I went, this is perfect.
Oh, really? Okay.
I feel that it challenges people from the get-go. I feel that while I'm not striving with Desultory to be the weirdo in the room.
Yeah.
But I would like people to think you're going to get something different. You're going to get something unexpected, just a different taste.
Sure.
I feel that right in there almost answers those questions. What's the difference between me making fart noises in a corner to who thinks that is entertaining?
Right.
Where does that line fall? What is, certain types of humor people might find crass. Other people might find that funny. So you have these walls, quote unquote, that are constantly changing, these lines.
Yeah.
And that's where it is.
Because I remember a couple of years ago, there was, what's the actor's name? Shia LaBeouf? LaBeouf? I don't know.
LaBeouf? Yeah. Shia LaBeouf?
The
Transformers
Indiana
kid.
Jones kid, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So he did what he called a performance art installation. I don't know if you heard about this at all, where he sat in a room with like a blindfold on, and just let people do whatever they wanted to do to him.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, I'm not sure that's art.
Right.
He's calling it performance art. That seems almost sadistic
or
masochistic to me.
Yeah.
So like, how do you, like, for you when you're putting your acts together, how do you delineate for yourself what's going to be art and what's going to be somebody just sort of, fulfilling some weirdo thing that they want to do?
I find that the stuff I really want to put out there is the stuff that resonates with me the most. It's stuff that I like, which has been a good and a bad thing. It's good because a lot of people like what I have to share.
Yeah.
It's also bad because at one point, like, you want to sit and go for a car ride with me.
Okay.
And I'll be like, we're going to listen to my songs. And everyone's like, oh boy. They're great songs, but they're not like what everyone wants. Everybody wants to hear, like, not necessarily the classics or their favorites, but I'm constantly listening to new things, interesting things. It's not that they're worse than other things.
Right.
It's just not necessarily everyone else's cup of tea.
Right. So as far as like deciding where the line is that something that you just sort of put into your audience's hands? Like, which side of the line are you going to fall on this one?
Yeah.
Or do you make some sort of judgment before you even agree to put this thing on?
There's a few times that I've brought in something. It's never been like a test in, like, I'm going to bring in someone that's really going to test them for 2 hours. Yeah. But if somebody had like, hey, I've got this weird little puppet show and it's 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I could sneak it in somewhere in between two things, or put it together in such a way where I'm not.
Okay.
I don't want to drive away my audience.
Right.
I want to challenge them sometimes, but I don't want to upset them in that way.
I mean, it's supposed to be entertainment,
yes,
first and foremost, right? So you started this thing like 9 years ago, and I know you said before that you wanted to be able to sort of highlight some of the weirder stuff, the less mainstream things in the area. So it started for you as a niche project, or were you really thinking more along the lines of, I'm just going to start this and we'll see what sort of performers, what sort of audience we get and cater it to them? Or has it always been just, I'm going to bring in the most eclectic stuff I can and just try to get people to come to it?
I fall towards fringe or stuff that's kind of obscure naturally.
Yeah.
I just get very distracted and I want to experience things.
Sure.
And this isn't necessarily a crack at anybody else doing any other business type stuff in theater or entertainment in Connecticut. But I thought to myself, here I am in the Northwest corner, born of this conversation where there's people like, where's cool stuff to find?
Yeah.
I did one thing. I did two things. I did two things. And people were coming. And I said to myself, as long as I'm not losing money and as long as people are entertained and people keep coming back, I'll just keep doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I just do it on a case by case. And some stuff I pass on. Sure. And some stuff I go with, but it's just like, oh, here's a really neat, I'll walk into a room somewhere like this room that we're in right now, the atrium at the Warner Theater. It's a gorgeous room.
Oh, sure is. Yeah.
I love nothing more than the set upstairs, and there's this beautiful little staircase up behind us. It's like a little fire escape. And, and you think of neat places to stage stuff, which I think that's what culminated with last year. We got our first grant, and we did this project called Secret Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream, where we took Midsummer Night's Dream, cut it into a bunch of pieces, and then had different groups produce them. And then there's this old mill up in Winston called Whiting Mill.
Whiting Mill? Okay.
Whiting Mills, yeah. And it's great. It's this wonderful old factory. They used to make men's underwear there. And it's two buildings, multi-level, and then there's access in different ways where you'll leave one floor and end up on another floor. So we reform these 5 groups. So it still flows from A to Z, but you'll see 6 different actors play one different character.
Oh, huh.
So act 1, scene 1 will be outside, and then you move in to go upstairs, and then there's like a little food course that you grab, and you move to the next room. And Elmwood did the 2 of the players sections for me, which is great. Elmwood Productions. Some of you guys out there might have heard from them. I also do work with them.
Okay.
But it's great, and I love that. Just being able to move people through a room where you're experiencing so many different things.
Yeah.
And now I'm at that point where it's like, all right, I've, put together a bunch of nights of music. I've put together a bunch of burlesque nights and comedy nights, and I'm not saying that those nights don't excite me. There's so many other groups doing that type of stuff in Connecticut right now. I'm not bored with the people involved. I'm just kind of, I get bored with a project. Yeah. And then I'll just kind of want to move away. And I have some ideas for the future, but...
Well, how much of that do you think might be... Because it seems to me like part of what you're trying to do is bring awareness to these different sorts of art that are being done. But once something like burlesque or whatever it is starts to take off a little bit, is that no longer really something that really fits in the mission of Desultory? I mean, they've got their own path they're on now. Maybe I'm very wrong about that. It just seems like maybe that's what's happening there.
I struggle with why so many other quote unquote artists in Connecticut struggle with the concept of ensemble, people working together, sharing the pie but elevating each other.
Sure.
I want to help other artists in so many different ways, however I can. And that's what it's always really been about. It's been more about me trying to make some friendships and having some great stories, as opposed to I've had people like, you're not a business person. You're not trying to make money. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Right.
I want to have fun. I'm in Connecticut. I want to have something cool to do tonight. Nobody else is doing anything. I'm going to create it.
Right.
I'm off subject.
Oh no, that's fine. Like, I guess what I'm thinking is, if you're taking stuff that's fringe, right? You're taking these little niche projects, these little independent artists or whatever.
Oh, right,
and you're giving them a platform.
I'm not.
Once that platform's established,
It's not that they're popular. It's just, it's so hard to like, hey, what are you doing this Friday night?
Yeah.
First off, I got to get through my work day. Right. Am I going out Friday night?
Right.
And then it's if I go out as my type of person, a more artsy person, I've got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
3 friends are doing theater shows. 2 friends are having art gallery openings. 1 friend wants to meet for a drink.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're like, well, what do I do?
Right.
Or do I even want to leave the house? So it's about trying to like get people out into these places.
Yeah. I mean, it seems, and I'm sort of experiencing this myself in my own community because I'm involved in community theater and trying to produce some stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found is that, yes, I know a lot of artists and I know a lot of actors and singers and everything, but they're all involved in all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's only going to see each other's things. So how do you bring in new people? Yeah. How do you extend that you know the hand of arts to people who aren't already a part of it and bring them in? And I guess in bringing in, you know, these more interesting or unique acts, maybe bringing in an audience that wouldn't have otherwise been able to see anything really.
Yeah. I love seeing like groups of people at different things, and then all of a sudden at the next one they're all hanging out.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
I one of the things that I'm happiest about in all the different things I've done with different arts communities is when somebody new starts and they come back the next time.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great to see that new level of excitement build in somebody that even if they didn't know it was there to begin with. So you were talking a minute ago about the building with the multi-levels and the staircases, and it sounds to me like you're thinking of that building almost as a character in your show.
Oh yeah.
So. And that got me thinking about the different ways you would use the different spaces because, like I said, you're kind of a nomadic group. How much of when you decide to do a show in a specific location, how much of that is actually determined by the space itself, like how you go about presenting the material?
We talk about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know, this is the type of show we're going to do. It's going to have X, Y, and Z. Some venues like to be more hands-on. Mm-hmm. Some venues are like, yeah, just make sure you lock up when you leave.
Yeah.
You know, so it's interesting each time. I really enjoy looking at a room. Sometimes a room has enough personality where you don't need to do anything. And it could be something like here, like today.
Yeah.
Like obviously this room is set up in a very specific way.
Sure.
There's only so much I could do without.
It's mostly the carpet.
Yeah. It's really crazy. It feels like I'm in a fun zone.
Yeah. It really does.
But there's other times where you go into a venue and they're like, just go for it. I've got lights, sound, I've got curtains, I've created 2 winters ago, I nearly killed myself trying to do this one burlesque and variety show at this cupcake shop.
Okay.
And they had it's an award-winning cupcake shop. They won Food Network's Cupcake Wars a bunch of years ago.
Okay.
And they're originally from this area, so they have a large shop and they wanted to do stuff.
All right.
So I started doing comedy shows for them, but the burlesque and variety shows were crazy.
Yeah.
So then I said, I'm going to do a show, and it was the last show I did there. I needed a break. I literally almost broke myself. I'm going to do one of those like 70s, 80s variety shows, you know, where a guy's like drinking by like a fire. There's like a Christmas. It's got a whole Christmas living room theme, like a Pee-wee's Playhouse, where people come to the door and we're like, hey, I wonder who's at the door. And the whole theme of the evening was me going back and continuously thinking that it was going to be a horrible night because Santa wasn't coming, and I kept drinking this scotch. And I got so drunk.
Oh, it wasn't prop scotch, huh?
No, it wasn't prop scotch. I didn't get like drunk, but there's definitely been a few times where everybody's having just so much fun. There's never been any real incidents, but there's definitely been a couple of times where I've been like, woo! You know, I'll go to reintroduce somebody and they'll be like, Keith.
Yeah.
I'm already on stage. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. But
oh no!
And then at the very end of it, I have this breakdown. I get the whole cast is on stage. I go, forget about it. It's not. I'm going to do a bah humbug. And then at the very back of the audience, you go, ho ho ho! And then Santa comes down, and then we all sing a song together. And it was insane the amount of effort and time I put into it, trying to come up with a script and trying to find like fake presents in one of those fake fireplaces with the fire that rolls and just. But, I want to have some fun, and that theatrical element will never leave. Even though I'm working on a band or something, I'm always like, what can I add to? And then some days I just don't.
Yeah. So how long ago was that one at the cupcake place?
Oh, man, that one. Christmas, it was 2 years ago. I've got some clips I could send you.
Yeah. Oh man.
I had people walking around the audience with like fake cameras.
Yeah.
Like a camera crew, like they were the in audience.
All right. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and I did, what was it? I did like Let It Snow, but I changed the whole thing to the whatever holiday show, and I added in a fake tap dance, a freaking fake tap dance. And still, it was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's hard, man, trying to do stuff around the holidays, and you're just trying to predicting that curve.
Oh, sure.
So I'm glad, I'm glad that other people have picked up the mantle.
Yeah.
I look in the local newspaper and I'm like, man, there's like 20 comedy shows going on tonight.
Comedy's gotten big in Connecticut.
Which is great. I love comedy, and I know some fantastic performers. The performers I've gotten to work with locally are just as good as most of these national people too. Yeah. And it's great because you have this personal sort of relationship.
Sure.
And then it's great. Now it's like, and at first you're kind of like bummed. At first, like, man, I wish I was doing a comedy show tonight. I wish I was. And then as you kind of move away from it and you get that time back, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I've got all this time for theater work. I forgot how much, lately I've been thinking about how much I've missed a lot of theater work.
Yeah.
Originally, when I first started doing like theater here, between on stage and off stage time, I could be here all week.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Just volunteering and whatever, painting. And so now I'm looking back at theatrical applications.
Okay.
What can we do? Almost like my buddy Adam that passed away. He always used to joke about guerrilla puppet theater. We'd pull up in the minivan and just like, and
GUE gorilla.
Yeah. But not like, the other, I forgot, that other kind of gorilla, not the banana gorilla. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. But then as I've lived and traveled, I've found artists that do stuff like that.
Oh, yeah?
So I want to bring them to Connecticut. And there's, I don't know, at least 25 to 30 of our artists were artists that I convinced to travel hours to just come to Torrington and put on a puppet show or show a movie or it was crazy. Everybody the first year of Desultory was like, you need to do a dance party. And I'm like, oh, yeah?
Oh.
Like, you should do an 80s party. And I'm like, everybody does an
80s.
Like, you should do a 70s party. And actually, I have a great idea for a 70s party, like a disco party, but that's not
all right
for here. And I was like, no. I'm like, who wants that? And then all of a sudden it dawns on me, I need to do a robot-themed rock and roll dance party.
Oh, boy.
Called the Robot Dance-Off. We've done like 6 or 7 of them now.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because we started it at this punk bar in Torrington.
Okay.
Did it for a few years, and then we did one at Museum of Modern Art in New Britain. We did one at the Cupcake Shop.
Wow.
We did one down at No Worries Brewing this past Halloween down in Hamden.
All right.
And it's crazy because we convinced a band the second year to come up from New York. Amazing band called the Fantastic Plastics. They're a duo. Right. It's like take a husband and wife, add in some diva and just plug it into a socket, and it's just got this. My boss, who ran the punk bar, Snapper McGee's, also has a small record label on the side, and he ended up booking them, and then within the next year, they were on Warped Tour.
Oh, wow.
So I brought a random band up from Brooklyn to Torrington, up in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Thanks, Keith," and I'm like, "Oh, that's so awesome." So I like being a part of stuff like that. There's other bands now that have gone on to become larger, and I could never book them at this point.
Yeah.
And like I said, and even there, I was like, man, I wish I could still book them. But then as time progressed and I learned to just be happy for them, I realized now that there's more time for me to create other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty incredible. How all that stuff kind of works itself out as you go along.
I know this is only like 45 minutes, but I have so many stories. I'm not a rich person by any means. Like I can take care of my stuff, but I'm living what I've been calling for a while now. I call it my precarious bohemian lifestyle. I won't let someone like, oh, you're a Renaissance man. I'm like, yeah, you might as well just call me a douche. I like to slide from bit to bit. I have a daytime job where I do some high-end landscaping for a few hoity-toity people down in the snooty section of Connecticut.
Okay.
And that allows me enough time I work for the Warner Theater. I run for all the national shows.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, man, we got to throw John Popper in somebody's car. And it'd be like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then it's weird. So, I brush into a lot of... I don't really try to chat people up, but I meet a lot of the celebrities that come up here, which is cool. It's a great opportunity to kind of watch stuff from the sides.
Sure, you can learn a lot by watching people like that.
Yeah. I love to direct for the Warner. They've thrown me some interesting projects. It all started with, I don't really have a lot of shows I wanted to direct, but one of the ones I've been dying for was Evil Dead the Musical. It's a rock version of Evil Dead, complete with a splatter zone, where the first four rows are covered in plastic.
It's like a Gallagher show.
And it's like a Gallagher show. We ended up doing it twice. In the second time, one of my really good friends, Sharon, who was the production manager here at the Warner, she wanted to do the show again, and her now husband brought in this setup where it was a sprinkler system.
Okay.
It was a hydraulic sprinkler system that you could run from the lighting board. So the second time we did it, we extended the splatter zone, and it was just insane. But like weird things, Reefer Madness is another one.
Oh wow!
But then they'll be like, oh, how about Neil Simon's Lost in Yonkers? Or this last year, I just directed The Unexpected Guest. It was actually the first show in the studio theater. So you have the big theater here that we're in now, which is 1,700 seats, and then next door we have the studio theater, which is more of a black box theater. And it's about 300 seats.
Nice. That's a couple of great spaces to work with. Wow.
So you got that. Elmwood Productions, who I'm involved with, doing puppetry stuff. And then I just started working for Waterbury Symphony Orchestra as their production manager.
Wow.
So I'm keeping it pretty busy.
Irons and fires all over the place, huh?
And gearing up for another Secret Shakespeare project this August. I'm having some issues. I had this one particular singer-songwriter that I loved out of Brooklyn, and I was following a particular musical version of Shakespeare.
Okay.
And then it kind of blossomed as I wasn't looking over the summer. So now I'm waiting to see when the rights will be available, or if the rights will be available. So it's sort of a race.
Yeah.
I have to use the grant by September, but I like to let people know. Kind of, it's going to be the same premise as what I was saying earlier with Midsummer. It's going to be up in that mill where it's like an adventure where you walk around.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it's real immersive and interesting. And it'll be our big project for the year.
Yeah.
We're going to do a couple small hit and miss things. I got a couple of neat ideas.
Okay.
We'll probably do another robot dance-off this year. But for the most part, I'm just going to kind of chill. Right now, I'm working at a show on the main stage here at the Warner called A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Okay. When is that?
It's a very small show that developed at Hartford Stage, and then it went on to win a couple of Tonys. And I think we might be one of the first community theaters to tackle it. Very small cast, very macabre, Edward Gorey, so to speak. A gentleman discovers that he's part of this long line of snooty snoot weirdos that have all of this money, and the last person standing gets all the money.
Okay.
And he decides that he's going to be the last person standing now that he realizes that he's part of the family.
Yeah.
I didn't realize going out to audition that the family is all played by one actor. There's eight people, I think. Yeah. But it's Victorian and very British as far as singing goes, but the themes are hilarious. There's this one, the first song I heard was called Poison in My Pocket.
Okay.
And it starts off very waltzy, where the two people are out on the ice and they're ice skating and like, and this guy's like on the side. He's like, I've got this poison in my pocket, and he's so excited about poisoning them, but all this like stuff happens, and it's weird and it's funny.
When does that one go up?
That goes up right before Valentine's Day.
Okay.
So I'm super excited about that.
I'll put a link up on the show notes for this then.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wanted to do something over the winter to kind of keep the doldrums from setting in.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And this is a real challenge because I don't read music. I do it a lot by ear.
Yeah.
So there's no place to go. Even the chorus is just like 6-7 people.
Wow.
So there's no like other person in my vocal range to hide behind.
Oh, okay.
It's like sink or swim, buddy. Like, awesome.
All right, great.
But hey, whatever. It's a challenge, and I'm willing to put in the work. So.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Before we get to the wrap up stuff,
Yeah.
I'm curious, like the stuff that you've done with Desultory. Is there one or two over the last 9 years that have just stood out for you, like in your head, that you're either really proud of being able to get that performance out there, or just surprised you in how amazing it was, or how the audience reception to it was?
I would say that there really isn't one. That's one of the reasons I created this, is to surprise people. You know, sometimes it's weird because sometimes the way we treat our artists, I feel it's a little different than everyone else.
Sure.
So even that, they'll come back to us and be like, man, you know, one of the reasons I've dealt with pocket vinyl for so long is like, you treat us so well.
Yeah.
You bring us an audience that really cares and understands. There's nothing worse than, and I get it, sometimes when you're in a bar and you're playing and people are talking over, and it just, I can't imagine, that has to be soul crushing. You have to be tougher than tough.
An empty house or an apathetic audience are just, they're really hard to deal with. That's, for me personally.
But it's been great. Like, we've done, CD release parties. We've done, all these crazy dance parties, theater performances, stuff I just wouldn't ever have expected to have done before. And I wanted to do something. Like, I needed to do something. If I'm going to be in this area, I was going to end up volunteering anyways. So why don't I try to create stuff on my own dime? And if people aren't interested, then I'll stop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 9 years later.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We've been all over. We've been all over the state. We worked with thousands of artists, and just, we've heard good things. We've heard bad things. We've laughed. We've cried.
Yeah. Well, I just hope a lot of people will go to desultorytheaterclub.com, right? That's the website.
Yeah.
And check it out, because there's a lot of interesting stuff on there. And I guess, whatever you've got coming up will always be on there.
Yeah, usually.
You're on Facebook.
Yeah, usually on our blog post, we update whatever show is coming up next.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to kind of dig through we took a less expensive option as far as our website.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Facebook, Instagram.
Oh, you're on Instagram too?
I do. It's more of a personal thing, but it's still Desultory Theater Club. But it's not all like just pictures of me, though. It's pictures. It's my life. It's more of my skewed kind of things that inspire me.
Okay.
I don't like to spell it out for everyone. Sometimes it's just like, here's my venue today. Click, click, and guess where I am.
Right.
Or some days it's like I'm working outside and be like, oh, this nice breeze made me think of bunnies.
Okay. All right. So I hope everybody will check out the website and come support all the local theater in Connecticut, especially in the Torrington area, because it sounds like there's tons of it here.
Yeah. Hey, if you're on Facebook, if people are still on Facebook, please give us a like. The more likes we have, the more important people think we are.
Sometimes I feel like I'm the last person using Facebook.
I don't know. I don't really touch my account as much as I try to touch the Desultory account. But I'm like, are people looking? And then they try to like throw these diagrams at you. And I'm like, I'm not paying.
I mean, I only have, if it was just me, I'd probably get rid of it. But all the different sites that I have to manage for different things, still on there.
I'll be on there till somebody like holds me down and be like, dude, this is absolute, not absolute.
All right, so let's get to the rapid fire part of the show. I got 5 questions for you. Whatever answer pops into your mind.
Oh, geez.
Don't think too hard.
Uh-huh.
All right, first one, the best meal you've ever had.
Best meal I've ever had. I've had a lot of really great meals. Meals that will always resonate with me is a lot of meals my grandmother made as a kid.
Yeah.
I ate a lot of grandma meals.
Did she have one specific recipe that really stands out?
She was Italian,
Okay,
so it was
all
a
right.
lot of like cutlets and meatballs and pasta and that kind of stuff that other people are like, oh, I made this, and it doesn't taste the same.
Right. All right, your favorite movie?
Oh, that's totally impossible. Max, if he's listening to this, he'll laugh. I have so many. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I could go for more directors. I like Tarantino.
Oh yeah.
I like. I was just watching something with Kurt Russell the other day, and I was thinking, what an amazing actor. I watched it was the Bad Times at El Rey, or that new El Royale. There's a new movie that just came out that he was in.
Okay.
But anyone that really kind of it inspires me, Wes Anderson is an amazing influence. Edgar Wright.
Ant-Man guy, right?
But there's portions of like he did Baby Driver.
Yeah.
And there's portions, I wish he had carried it through the movie. My buddy Max and I have discussed this, but like he times like things with the music. So as you're watching visually, like especially later on, there's a couple of gun battles.
Okay.
And if you're listening to like the Queen song and where the gunshots are timed with the music.
All right. I haven't seen Baby Driver.
Neat.
I'll have to check that one
But
out.
like Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one.
I wasn't a giant fan of Hot Fuzz, although I liked Hot Fuzz.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a letdown after.
Yeah,
after the first
I watched so many movies, and I'm so surprised. And even foreign film, I love foreign film too. So it's you just never know.
Yeah. All right. So, have you ever read a book that? Let me finish the sentence.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever read a book that either changed your life in some way or shaped the way you look at the world?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love reading. It's funny because there's so many cliche books. Mm-hmm. There's what's the one with the motorcycle? It's the dad and the daughter and the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Yeah.
It's books like that. I love On the Road.
Okay.
While Kerouac is not my favorite beat, something about On the Road and just, being younger and reading that. A lot of these are going to go back to just like classics that I remember as a kid: The Hobbit, Alice in Wonderland, Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn.
Sure.
And then like newer stuff. I'm a giant Neil Gaiman fan.
Oh yeah.
But then I've been getting into a lot of bios lately. I'm not necessarily interested in politics, but like certain types of artists will really interest me. I'll be like, oh, I should check this out, or somebody that's been on some kind of like journey of some kind. I just like anything that will take me on that journey.
You mentioned Neil Gaiman. I don't know if you read the Ocean at the End of the Lane.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
The
imagery in that book was amazing, and in such a short format too, because it's not a long book. Yeah. But I really was blown away by that one.
Well, I forgot, it was BBC Radio or something. Right now, New York Public Library has a 2-hour. It's Gaiman reading Christmas Carol, which I'm excited to listen to sometime over the next few days, along with he did that book where they redid Asgardian Tales.
Norse mythology.
Yeah, they've got an amazing cast together with like Bill Nighy and a few people. They've done that.
I listened to the audio version of that book a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's a good one.
They just did a celebrity whatever for. I don't know, it's up on.
Yeah, he's a great writer.
Yeah.
One place that you think everyone should visit before it's too late?
Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Okay, you had that one like ready to go.
No. Fort Smith, Arkansas is pretty horrible. It's one of those towns where you're so bored that you just decide you're going to walk 6 miles so you can cross the Oklahoma border, sing Oklahoma to yourself, and then walk back.
Let me just double check, make sure nobody from Arkansas is listening. I don't think that one's popped up, but I've been to a few different places in Arkansas, and they all sound like that.
What was the end of the question?
Just someplace everyone should go before it's too late to do it, and that could be for any reason. Maybe just too old to travel, or it's not going to be there anymore.
Right. I would go visit any place foreign that you can before all foreign countries hate us.
Okay. No. What's that, like a week from now?
Quick, get a trip into Montreal while you can.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I haven't been there. I got to get there. And last one time in your life that you can remember where you just laughed uncontrollably.
Oh man, did this thing where we almost drove to Mexico from Queens one day.
How do you almost drive to Mexico?
So
Mexico, the country, not Mexico, New York.
It was a Sunday afternoon, and my roommate at the time, Scott, he was hanging out and watching the Eagles, as Philadelphia people do.
Okay.
Is that Philadelphia Eagles? Yeah.
Football team, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was hot out, and then we just kept going. I don't know. We kept getting up and be like, we should go to Mexico. And he'd be like, no, Mexico's hot. And we'd be like, Mexico's not hot. Mexico's cool, man. And it wasn't necessarily that, but trying to retell people the story. Sure. Just the afterwards, we ended up driving all the way down to, I don't know, we left the house and Scotty's yelling down from the top. He's like, where are you going? We're like, we're going to Mexico. And like, all right. So we start driving, and then we get down to we get to Philly.
Yeah.
And we're driving, and then I think we got as far as Baltimore.
That's not close.
And finally, from Astoria. And finally, my buddy Jason was in the car. He's like, dude, we got to turn around. And Adam, who was driving, it was like, oh, okay. I was just waiting for somebody to say, let's turn around.
So you got, 4 hours into a three-day trip?
But wow. I was lucky enough to have and I still do, but I've got some pretty brutal friends. And, man, I tell you, my face hurts a lot.
Oh, that's awesome.
A real lot.
That's
I don't care if it's a show that I'm watching or just BSing around a table.
Yeah.
Sometimes something will just drop in the room and I'm crying and it hurts.
Laughter's the best.
Yes.
All right. So the last thing I like to do with everybody is to get a recommendation. Now, I warned you about this before we started, so you've had time to think. What is the thing that you want to recommend other people get a chance to check out if they haven't?
Has anyone in the audience considered being a servant to Satan? No.
Not another one.
If ever you make it up to the northwest corner, there's a lot of places that let me kind of chill and develop myself as an artist. As far as fuel goes, if you are ever in the Torrington area and you're strapped and you're like, oh man, I need some real coffee, I would definitely make my way to the Good Company Coffee House.
Oh, okay.
They are fantastic, and there's beautiful things to be seen. Torrington's a great trip to check out. You should make a little adventure.
Yeah.
We've got some really great restaurants. We've got the 5 Points Gallery. I really feel that there isn't one particular place to point out, because so much of just being here reminds me of just not necessarily being local, but supporting local artists, supporting local venues, really just giving more of a care, even if it's just $5. You don't think $5 is a lot, but go online and buy a song from a local, whatever it is. But you should take that's what the message should be.
Yeah.
It should be me encouraging anyone else to push yourself beyond that boundaries and find what that special thing I ought to be telling you right now. What's special right near you that's been under your nose that you've never experienced?
Yeah.
What's that restaurant? What's that? Don't go to a Starbucks. Don't go to a 99. I mean, if you need to support,
you just named the two sponsors of the show.
No. but what's that crazy little place that I've never been to that does breakfast? Go check it out.
Yeah. I always try to encourage support local businesses, local artists as much as I can. Yeah.
And there's a great scene that's starting back up in Torrington. They do music on Sundays now at Good Company Coffee House. Mm-hmm. But my friend Rana, who's just amazing, she's got this great energy. There's a little art gallery, and it's funny because it's right next to where Artwell used to be.
Okay.
It's called the Nolke Gallery, Noelke.
Okay.
And she's starting to do shows just like I used to.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. So it's great to see somebody else bringing in some bands, and it's got a whole great different kind of vibe, and she wants to create a scene, which I think is fantastic. So I'm going to help out as much as I can there.
Yeah, we'll have to follow along the Torrington art scene now.
Yeah, Nolke Gallery, or what they do, hashtag Nolke Effect.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They've got this whole, it's great. I mean, we've had, they've only been doing it for a little while now, and they've already had some amazing artists there. And it's great because I don't have to do any work. I could just go and
be a member of the audience,
and enjoy and be like, woo.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Show's over and I could just leave. I don't have to spend an hour breaking down.
Cleaning up. And
I'll be
paying
breaking
everybody.
down shows and people want to hang out and they'd be like, I really can't right now. They're like, you in a bad mood? I'd be like, no. I'm like, it's just 11 o'clock and I
Yeah,
want to go
yeah.
home and nobody else is doing this.
Yeah. Wow. All right. How you feeling right now?
I'm pretty good. You know,
Yeah.
it's Sunday. I've got rehearsal later tonight, but
Yeah.
you know, considering that Christmas is a few days away, I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year, even though this isn't coming out until end of January.
Right. I'll say bah humbug, but not bah humbug in a way where it relates to destroying your holiday. I'll just say bah humbug. My grandfather was a huge fan
Yeah.
of Jacob Marley and the whole Christmas Carol thing.
Yeah.
All year long, he'd be like, bah humbug. You're nothing but a bit of undigested beef. And I don't know. And now I say it. Now my exclamation of dismay, I'll be like, humbug. And
Yeah.
people are like, oh, don't be. I'm like, I'm not saying I want to destroy your holiday. I'm just saying it's not my thing.
I'm going to isolate that you're nothing but undigested beef
Okay.
as the intro for the show from now on.
Fine. That's great. But I just want to, you know, I don't know. I love the spirit. I love the thought of it. But I'm just not, the commercialism of it all just
It's
destroys
too
me.
much.
The fact that so many people are out there hurting, it's just so hard for me to be like, woo, I'm having fun just
Yeah.
like everyone else.
No, I get it completely.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho. All right. That's it. Thank you so much. for
Yeah,
doing
thank
this.
you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Okay. One more great big thank you to Keith for what was really a great chat. Make sure to follow Desultory on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check out some of their videos on YouTube. And if you're in the Torrington area, definitely try to catch one of their performances. The schedule can be found at desultorytheaterclub.com. That's DESULTORYTHEATRECLUB.com. If you'd like to reach out with a question or a comment, or you just want me to send you a sticker, drop a line, tabletostage@gmail.com. If you follow the pod on the social media things, you'll be able to get more info about some great creators and upcoming events in the area, including some Table to Stage live events that I hope to announce in the coming months. And if you like swag, visit spreadshirt.com/tabletostage for some of the swaggiest swag you can swag. That's it for now. Until next time, keep creating.